It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon at Miami International Airport, where the air buzzed with the usual hum of activity, announcements echoing over the intercom, passengers wheeling suitcases to their gates, and travelers sipping overpriced coffee at crowded cafes. The smell of fresh brewed espresso and the faint scent of airport disinfectant mingled in the air, a familiar combination for seasoned travelers. Among the sea of people, families saying tearful goodbyes, business people rushing to their flights, tourists fumbling with their passports, one man stood apart, Futo Takahashi. Everything about him commanded attention, not just his meticulously tailored navy suit that hugged his frame with perfection, or the polished leather shoes that gleamed under the fluorescent airport lights, but the air of quiet dominance he carried. Futo didn't just walk through life. He owned every space he entered. As the CEO of Titan AI, a rapidly growing AI startup based in Tokyo, Futo was no stranger to success. His company had been recently valued at over $1 billion, a fact he had ensured was prominently displayed in Forbes, Bloomberg, and, of course, all over his social media. His Instagram? A carefully curated collection of his life's highlights, exclusive boardrooms, luxury yachts, private jets, and bottles of champagne with captions like, "Another deal closed. Another empire built." His Twitter? A stream of bold statements about disrupting industries, leading the future, and leaving competitors in the dust. Today was no different. As he strolled through the terminal toward his gate, his phone buzzed with notifications. Hundreds of likes, retweets, and comments from admirers and critics alike. His latest post, a sleek black and white image of him raising a glass of champagne aboard a Gulfstream G650, had already gone viral. Leading the future, short, impactful, powerful. A smirk played on his lips. Futo had no patience for the chaos of airports. Economy class? Unthinkable. Even business class felt beneath him now. He only flew first class, where the air smelled of leather and expensive cologne, and where flight attendants addressed you by name, with polite but distant smiles. As he approached the first-class check-in counter, the airline staff straightened their postures. They knew his type, the kind of passenger who expected seamless service, who never waited in lines, and who, with the swipe of a black Amex, could make problems disappear. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Takahashi." The flight attendant greeted him with practiced warmth, a polished smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Futo nodded, barely acknowledging her. Politeness was optional. Efficiency was key. He had bigger things on his mind, like rehearsing his next high-stakes pitch to investors in Osaka. The first-class cabin was everything he expected. Plush leather seats, ample leg room, privacy dividers, personal screens, a haven for the elite, a sanctuary where noise-canceling headphones and Dom Perignon replaced crying babies, and the clatter of economy-class meal trays. Seat 2A, his throne for the next 14 hours. With practiced ease, he slipped off his blazer, draping it over the seat, then carefully placed his Louis Vuitton carry-on in the overhead compartment. His laptop was out within seconds. He had work to do, emails to send, ideas to refine, and, of course, a few more social media flexes to post. As he adjusted his headphones, blocking out the world, he noticed something. The seat next to him, 2B, was still vacant. Good. Futo valued his solitude, no small talk, no unnecessary distractions. Just him, his laptop, and the future he was building. But his luck didn't last. A few minutes later, as the last of the passengers settled into their seats, a figure appeared beside him. The contrast was immediate. The man who slid into 2B was dressed in a plain hoodie, gray and slightly worn, as if it had been washed 100 times. His sneakers, though clean, lacked the designer logos Futo was accustomed to seeing in first class. His modest black backpack looked out of place, in a cabin where Hermes briefcases and Tumi luggage were the norm. For a moment, Futo felt mildly amused. This man, here, it wasn't just about clothing, it was about presence. First class wasn't just about money, it was about status, confidence, belonging. And this man, he didn't belong. The stranger settled in without fuss, moving with quiet ease, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. No frantic checking of the seatbelt. No overly eager calls to a flight attendant. Just calm. Futo barely spared him a glance. "Evening," the man said softly, offering a polite nod. Futo didn't even look up. "Yeah, sure," he muttered, too busy perfecting a tweet for his 500,000 followers. A quick brag about his latest business milestone. Something impressive, something sharp. The man didn't seem bothered. He simply pulled out a water bottle, a standard, no-brand, plastic one, from his backpack. Futo glanced at it, then smirked. Water. In first class? He couldn't help himself. "Water?" he muttered, just loud enough. "Might as well be an economy." The man paused, glanced at him briefly, then simply smiled, a faint, almost amused expression, before unscrewing the cap and taking a slow sip. He didn't engage, didn't defend himself, didn't offer any justification. Interesting. Most people, when faced with Futo's cocky remarks, either shrunk in discomfort or tried too hard to prove themselves. This man did neither. Futo returned to his laptop, shrugging it off. Whoever this guy was, he was irrelevant, just another passenger. As the cabin doors closed and the engines roared to life, Futo leaned back, ready for another routine flight. He had flown this route countless times. Miami to Osaka, the city where another high-profile meeting awaited him. A few hours of work, fine dining, and sleep, and he'd land in Japan, ready to conquer yet another boardroom. But something about the man in 2B nagged at him. The way he carried himself. The quiet confidence. The effortless calm. There was no restless scrolling on his phone. No nervous checking of emails. No compulsion to prove anything to anyone. Futo didn't realize it then, but this stranger, this man who drank water instead of champagne, was about to change everything. The hum of the airplane engines filled the first-class cabin, a steady, rhythmic sound that most passengers found soothing, a background melody to their in-flight experience. But for Futo Takahashi, the real entertainment had just begun. The man in seat 2B sat in quiet contrast to the opulence surrounding him. While others sipped champagne and flipped through financial reports on their tablets, he was calmly scrolling through his phone, his hoodie slightly pulled up over his head, casting a faint shadow over his features. Futo couldn't ignore him, not because of who he was, he didn't even know his name yet, but because of what he represented, a misfit, a question mark in a space where everything was supposed to make sense. The hoodie, the worn sneakers, the lack of any visible arrogance. Everything about this man stood in stark opposition to the carefully curated world Futo lived in. And yet, he was here, which meant he could afford to be here. And that intrigued Futo. A mix of curiosity and quiet disdain stirred in his chest. Futo breaks the silence. He wasn't one to let unanswered questions linger. With a practiced, effortlessly confident tone, he leaned slightly in and broke the silence. "So," Futo began, casual yet deliberate, as if he were throwing a challenge rather than starting a conversation. "What do you do?" The man in 2B looked up briefly, his face still partially obscured by the shadow of his baseball cap. His expression was unreadable. Calm, measured, detached. "I work in tech," he replied simply, his voice smooth and controlled, revealing nothing. Futo smirked. Tech. That word meant 1,000 different things these days, but to him, it only meant one: power. And from the looks of this guy, power wasn't what he had. "Tech, huh? Same here." Futo leaned back, arms stretching slightly, taking up just a little more space. His voice carried an air of practiced confidence, the kind that made people lean in, pay attention. "Bet we've got some stories to share. What's your field? Crypto? AI? Everyone's jumping on those bandwagons these days." A baited hook, an invitation to compare resumes. But the man didn't bite. "Not exactly," he replied. Polite. Neutral. Unyielding. Futo's smirk faltered, just slightly. He was used to dominating conversations, to people leaning in, trying to impress him. Yet this man seemed completely unaffected, unmoved, almost as if he didn't care. And that irritated Futo. If there was one thing Futo loved more than winning, it was challenging, and he knew exactly how to test someone. He shifted the conversation toward a name that always sparked debate. "You know who's overrated?" Futo said, his voice dropping slightly, inviting intrigue. He leaned forward, resting one elbow on the armrest between them. "Elon Musk." The man in 2B paused, just for a second, his finger hovering over his phone screen. Futo noticed. He felt a rush of satisfaction. He had hooked him. "People act like he's some kind of genius," Futo continued, pushing the words out with casual confidence, like an investor predicting the fall of a stock. "But let's be real. He's just a master at hyping up mediocre ideas." Silence. For a fleeting moment, Futo thought he had gotten through, thought he had finally cracked this quiet enigma in 2B. And then, the man chuckled. Not loudly, not mockingly, just a quiet, almost imperceptible sound. But it was enough. Futo frowned. What the hell was that? "You think I'm wrong?" he challenged, his voice rising just slightly, enough to catch the attention of a few nearby passengers. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he simply tilted his head slightly, considering. Then he answered. "No," the man replied, his voice still calm, still controlled. "I think you're passionate." Passionate. A simple word, yet somehow loaded. Futo's frown deepened. Was that an insult? A compliment? A dismissal? Passionate? Futo scoffed, running a hand through his hair. "I call it realistic. People like Musk? They ride the wave of hype, nothing more." This time, the man in 2B finally looked up. Really looked up. For the first time, Futo saw his eyes. Sharp, clear, observant. And there was something else. Something familiar. But before Futo could place it, the man spoke again. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion." His voice was steady, neutral, unshaken. And then, just as quickly as he had looked up, he returned his focus to his phone. Futo rolled his eyes. A cop-out answer, a non-response. He took it as a sign of ignorance, as if this man simply didn't have the depth to engage at his level. Sure, Futo said, waving a hand dismissively, like a teacher brushing off a student's half-baked argument. But let's be honest. Guys like Musk are all PR stunts. It's people like me, the real innovators, who actually build the future. A statement. A challenge. But the man in 2B didn't argue. He didn't push back. He simply glanced out the window. And then he smiled. Just for a second. So faintly, so subtly, that Futo almost missed it. When the man finally spoke, his words were measured, deliberate. Building the future takes all kinds, he said. Visionaries, doers, even critics. Futo grinned. Finally, a concession. He leaned back in his seat, arms crossed in victory. Exactly, he declared. Critics like me keep everyone grounded. But the man didn't respond. He simply reached into his bag and pulled out a book. Without another word, he flipped it open and began to read. His body language a clear dismissal. And just like that, he was done with the conversation, leaving Futo simmering in his seat. Hours had passed. The hum of the aircraft had become a lullaby for most passengers. Some had dozed off under plush blankets, while others mindlessly flicked through the in-flight entertainment, the glow of their screens flickering in the dimmed cabin. Futo Takahashi had tried to focus on his laptop, but something about the exchange with the man in 2B lingered in his mind, unsettling him in a way he couldn't quite explain. The conversation had ended, yet somehow it felt like he had lost, without even realizing when or how. And Futo didn't lose. He wasn't used to people deflecting his provocations so effortlessly. He wasn't used to people shrugging him off as if he were just another voice in the crowd. And yet, this man had done exactly that. Still, Futo shook it off. It didn't matter. Whoever this guy was, he was nobody important. He took another sip of his drink, letting the smooth taste of the aged whiskey settle on his tongue. First-class luxury. Power. Success. That's what mattered. And then, everything changed. A flight attendant approached seat 2B, her movements noticeably different this time. She wasn't just serving a passenger. She was acknowledging someone important. She leaned in slightly, her voice carrying an unspoken respect, almost bordering on reverence. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "The captain wanted me to confirm that your connection in Osaka is prepared. They'll be ready for you upon arrival." Futo's hand froze mid-sip. The glass hovered inches from his lips, his fingers tightening around the smooth crystal as his brain tried to catch up. "Sir, Captain, ready for you?" His thoughts scrambled, reaching for context, for some logical explanation that made sense. Who the hell was this guy? The man in 2B barely reacted. He simply glanced up, nodded politely, and responded in that same calm, measured tone. "Thank you." There was no arrogance in his voice, no entitlement, just quiet acknowledgement, as if this level of treatment was routine. Futo's grip on his glass tightened. The flight attendant bowed slightly before retreating, leaving behind a silence that felt suddenly heavier. And then, the moment Everything clicked. The man adjusted his cap, shifting it just enough for the cabin lighting to illuminate his face perfectly. For the first time, Futo saw him clearly. It hit him like a bolt of lightning. His breath caught. His pulse skipped. No way. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. And yet, it was. The man in seat 2B wasn't just some low-profile tech worker. He wasn't an investor or a random startup founder or a quiet coder flying under the radar. He was Elon Musk. Elon Musk. The man Futo had just spent hours criticizing. The man he had mocked, dismissed, and dissected with smug certainty. The man he had accused of being nothing more than hype was sitting right next to him. Futo's fingers slipped against the condensation of his glass. There was a faint clink as the drink almost tipped over, the sudden sound drawing subtle glances from nearby passengers. But Futo didn't notice them. His thoughts were spiraling. Every word, every critique, every smug remark, they all came rushing back at once, hitting him like a tidal wave of regret and disbelief. And then, as if sensing the exact moment of realization, Musk turned his head slightly. He met Futo's gaze. His expression was calm. No anger, no malice. Just quiet amusement. Almost as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. Futo's throat tightened. His mouth felt dry. Suddenly, he had nothing to say. No clever remarks, no calculated responses, no smooth comebacks. Just a single, stammered sentence. You're Elon Musk." The words barely escaped his lips, almost choking on the weight of them. Musk held his gaze for a beat longer. Then he smiled. Faint. Knowing. Effortless. "That's what they tell me." And just like that, everything Futo thought he knew crumbled. For the first time in years, Futo Takahashi, the man who prided himself on control, confidence, and certainty, found himself utterly, profoundly humbled.